Hey everyone, Dr. Baron Grutter here. I want to make a quick video showing a new utility I've been using to create my surgical guide, or my occlusal guards, sorry. In the past I've made videos showing how to use Blue Sky Plan and Mesh Mixer to make your guards, which is great, it still works, but recently I have transitioned to using this utility instead. It is a purchase software, it's $300, but in the grand scheme of software it is still pretty darn inexpensive in my mind. So anyway, the name of the software is D3Splint. Now it's part of a bigger project being developed by Dr. Patrick Moore, a good friend. He is working on D3 tool to do a lot of different things beyond just splints. But for now, the splint module is what we're using. Like I said, it's $300. So anyway, how it works is you download it, you'll get a zipped folder, and then you open it up. And this is all based on Blender, which is a 3D software. It's a little bit confusing, can be intimidating if you just jump into it just to use it like a novice user without any sort of setup, if you will. It's hard to explain, but as is in this application, it's very straightforward. So don't be intimidated by the fact that it's based on Blender. So I'm going to click on here. It's going to open up the program. I'm going to zoom in here. I just clicked away that little starting screen. We don't need that. So the first thing it's going to do is, because it's still in development, you just have to check this box, not for clinical use. That is basically saying, okay, if you're going to use it, that's fine, but you're kind of taking responsibility. So as long as you're okay with that, and if you're using Mesh Mixer, you are basically doing the same thing. So anyway, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to import the models. Notice there is a save and a save checkpoint. So you save your work, you can save a checkpoint so that you can come back if you get halfway through it and you need to go somewhere else. The whole process takes 5 to 10 minutes depending on what you're trying to do. And it's a lot of just click, 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 click. So anyway, once again, the first thing I need to do is I need to determine what kind of splint this is going to be. It's going to be a maxilla. It's going to be a Michigan style splint, and so first thing I'm going to do beyond that is import the models. So I'm going to come over to I got this patient, me working up, click on his upper and lower. Now hold the shift button, not the control button, which you're probably used to. Shift button to select multiple models. Click import STL. Now the software is going to bring these in. I'm going to zoom out by using my wheel. Now you'll have to get used to the buttons. They're different than other softwares. Right now I'm actually pressing and holding the wheel button to allow it for it to allow me to move around. Okay, again, in and out is with the wheel. Left click, it actually just changes your focus point. Essentially, you can see the little cursor moving around. And then lastly, if I right click, it allows me to move objects. If you do that by accident, and you will, just hit the escape button. It'll on your keyboard. All right. So going through the checklist, the first thing it asks me to do is to set my splint model. Click on that, and you'll see it get highlighted. Click. Now set opposing. Highlight. Click. Now we're going to go to set landmarks. It'll tell you what to do. Mark the patient's right molar occlusal surface. Click here, click the left molar occlusal surface, click the incisal edge, doesn't matter where really, and now click the midline. Okay, somewhere, doesn't matter where, it doesn't matter how high or low, you're just trying to find the middle of the arch. Close enough, and now just press enter to finish. Okay, so it has now created a virtual articulator. Now all these measurements are based on averages, and you have the ability to change the values, change the distances, change the various angles. You can rock this around if you want, do whatever you'd like, Control Z to undo. So it's got very, very robust ability to change things. Now I don't typically change much, but just so you know, you can. You can also change the pin setting. If you want to open the patient up or close them down, you are able to do that. Ignore this back here. This is I used the Shining 3D digital scanner at the time. When we scanned these models, I was using a paper towel to hold the model still. Don't worry, just ignore that. That's just sort of extraneous data, but it won't affect what we're doing here. Okay, so now I'm going to say I'm going to skip all of this, okay? Because this is where we can change the different values of the articulator, we can change the pin steady, and then we can recover it if we want to go back to normal. So for now, I'm going to go ahead and mark the maxillary curve. You can read these directions, but essentially what we're going to be doing is I'm going to click the cuss tips all the way around, and size the ledge, and if you skip a cuss tip, it's going to be okay. It's not a big deal. Now we're going to say to hit enter. Now I need to click the mandibular curve. Now it's going to be the lingual cusps. So basically non-functional cusps is what we're marking. I'm not really being particular where I'm putting these in the anterior, so don't take my points to mean a whole lot. Okay, enter. And now we need to survey the model. So it's already, it knows to orient the model. This is telling us where the undercuts are, just like a traditional surveyor. You can move this around, this indicator, but it did a pretty good job for me, so I'm going to leave it alone. Now I'm going to mark the splint margin. Where do I want the splint to extend? Now everyone has their own preferences. Some people like to come up high on the canines. And if you don't like a spot, you can right-click on it, right-click on it, right-click on it, right-click on it. Okay, so we need to continue all the way around. Now this model isn't great. There's a little bit of stone back here. I think we can work with it though. I'm going to avoid this little potential break in the stone, a little void in the stone. Alright. And then we get all the way around, you click on the final dot, and now you've got it totally inscribed. Okay? Go ahead and hit enter. And so now we just need to click trim model. It's going to cut away everything apical to the splint line. Give it a second. This is one of the steps that does take a moment for the computer to process. And there we go. Alright. Now we're going to click on splint shell. This is determining how thick do we want it to be. 1.5 is the default. I'm going to go ahead and accept that. It usually works pretty well. And it essentially inflates it. It inflates it universally, meaning inside the model as well, or the arch, but that's okay. We'll subtract that out later. Now we're going to create the wax rim. And actually one thing I'm noticing is that void in the model created a little bit of an deformation here. So I'm going to Control Z. I'm going to come back and I'm going to come all the way to the point where I'm going to draw the line again. Now a little tedious to have to redraw the dots again, but that's no big deal. I'm going to work a little bit faster now that I'm not explaining what I'm doing. It's also really easy to spend too much time doing this sort of thing. Some people would say, well, geez, you had a mistake. You should re-record this video so you don't have any mistakes. But that seems sort of artificial to me. So I'm going to go ahead and push on through. Trim the model. And if we get that same little thing, it's okay. I'm trying to avoid it, but if we get that same little bleb, it's okay. We can move forward. And I think this will be a little bit better, but again, there's still ways to address that. If I'd had a better model to begin with, that would have totally addressed that, but I don't. So anyway, we will be able to fix that in a moment. Okay, still a little better. So now, at this point, we need to add the wax rim, which is essentially your bite rim. Now, there's different ways to do this. I'm going to go ahead and add a full rim. You could do an anterior, posterior. You can pick how you want it. There's also the different dimensions. I usually just stick with the default unless I see that it doesn't look like it's going to work. Okay. If you want to see if it works, click here. Now, over here, this lists every single surface we have here, and including the lower jaw. There's a little eyeball right here. If I turn it on, I can see that, and I can see that the lower teeth are sticking into that wax rim everywhere. That's all I need to know. As long as there's contact, because it's going to get subtracted out, I'm fine. The only thing I might need to do is, if this wasn't sticking through, is to go back and make that wax rim a little bit taller. But all looks well. I'll go ahead and fuse the two of them. This is going to make these two one solid object. Alright, good to go. Come down here, and now sometimes you'll have concavities down through here, just little transition zones. So this right here, we're going to click on block out large concavities. Okay, and so now we need to click on Auto Sculpt the concavities. I stick with the default once again. You'll see it change just a little bit. Actually, it might move this whole model, so it might be hard to see what it accomplishes. Yeah, so you can see that it kind of gets a little bit of an odd shape there. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the silhouette so we can see this a little better. Okay. Now I can actually hit Remesh and Smooth, and you'll see things get even smoother than they are now. Once again, I stick with the defaults, and everything is much smoother. Control Z just so you can see what that looks like once again. There, it's kind of rough, a little bit rough out here. Remesh Smooth, and watch what happens. There you go. It just gets smooth. Okay, so now we've done all that. The next thing we're going to do, we're just keep going down the list. We're going to mark the opposing contacts. So really, I'm just putting the cuss tips from the posterior. Well, of course, cuss tips not including the canine. So all posterior cuss tips. Click OK. And now I can, where am I at? Subtract posterior plane, and you can see what happened is it cut that whole plane out. Where the teeth were well sunk in, now they're just barely touching at the cuss tips. So we keep going down. We now are at, we can mess with the articulator values again if we want for anterior guidance. We can add an anterior ramp if we need to, but since I did a full rim, don't need to do that. One thing we are going to do is generate a functional surface. Click OK. There's the default, and you can watch the animation as the teeth are moving through. It's like it's grinding on an articulator, moving up through all the various motions that the jaw should be able to accomplish, and it's creating a sort of plane that it would, or a negative value that we can then subtract from the occlusal guard. Okay, so once I've done that, I can now click Subtract Functional Surface, and now you can see that the anterior is also now not well invested, just minor contact, and we have set in our functional surface, our pathway. Now we can remesh and smooth because it does create some sharp areas. Okay. If I hold the Shift button, I accidentally hit space. Hold the Shift button and click the mouse. Instead of just turning it around, I can actually slide it around. So you can see some of those sharp areas. If I hit Remesh and Smooth, it just sort of softens all of that up. Okay. Lastly, I'm going to grind MIP, so maximum intercruspation, because when I just did that smooth, it tends to make it sort of intersect a little bit. So click right there, grind MIP, and now, which you can't really tell, I'll turn that back on just to show you. The spots aren't as big because now the point of contact, we're kind of ground into it. And that right there is your splint. So I can sculpt this, I can smooth things. I honestly don't use that tool. Patrick has worked so hard to get it to the point where we don't even need to sculpt or to smooth things, subtract things, whatever. So I just suggest staying away from it, not even messing with it. So that's the outside of our splint, but now it's still invested within the upper teeth. So we need to subtract the upper teeth. So for that, we continue down, passivity offset. So what I'm gonna, this is basically the spacer. I like to be up in the 17 to 18 range. Some people go as low as 1/10 of a millimeter. So I'm going with 1800s. That's just a personal preference. What I've seen to seem to fit well with my print output. Oh, I hadn't actually clicked OK. Sorry. So there's the there it is, sort of expanded or extruded. Block out undercuts. I leave it as a default. And what it's doing is it's adding to this the areas that need to be undercut or that are undercut so that the guide can come in and out easily. If you want to keep a little bit of the undercut, you can tell it to, but again, that's more heavy lifting, if you will, in my opinion. Finalize the splint. Click OK. And if we have an error, we have the ability to mess with these two little tools right here. And we did, so that's okay. Don't freak out. I kind of anticipated that might happen. Control Z. Come to finalize splint. Change one of these to carve. Click OK. Let's see what we get. Patrick again is always working on this, trying to make it better and better. But there's every geometry, every mouth is different, so there's some things still aren't that simple to code for. So you just have to be, understanding that these little things, we're going to change each of these to try and find which combination makes the software work best. And again, you just have to kind of be patient. Okay, so at first, let's go ahead and turn off the trimmed model, and here is our guard. Our guard is complete. That trimmed model just kind of shows you where the teeth would fit in there, but we're all done. So the last thing we need to do is click Export Splint STL. I'm just going to put it right up in here. Upper Michigan splint. Click Export, and we're done. Don't forget, probably should have done this far sooner, but to click Save. Same folder. I like to call it the same thing because the file type is the same, or is different. I'm not going to mix them up. Okay, and that is it. There are some other tools beyond it where you can do even more things, but honestly, this is it for me. This is for my daily use of guide design. That's it. Not a whole lot of real thought involved in the process. It's sort of just moved right along. But if we turn on the upper jaw just to see how this is going to fit the patient, here it is. Okay, and if we turn on the lower jaw, there it is. Alright, well, I hope you guys find this interesting and hopefully useful. I tell you what, I'm pretty excited about it. Patrick's been updating this software constantly. He's added some other tools. How to base models is built in here, which is, I got to tell you, I got to make another video on that because basing your models and hollowing them and everything and getting them print ready is the fastest, easiest I've seen. So Anyway, very cool. Look for more updates if you're curious. You can also follow him on YouTube. I hope it's okay that I give his name. It's Patmo, Patmo. I swear there's an E in there. Oh, yeah. Patemo for Patrick Moore. But anyway, hope that helps. Let me know if you have any questions. All right, I'll talk to you later. Oh, and I'm sorry. Please remember, if you're interested in following other videos that I put out, it's all free videos. Just go ahead and subscribe. That way you'll be notified as I put out new content. And please go ahead and check out my website at barongruterdds.com. I try to keep things sort of organized there a little bit better, different pages for different topics, and then also many of the different products that I purchase myself and recommend if you're wanting tools for 3D printing or ortho or various other things. I have them listed there. Again, whether you buy them or not is up to you. I just like to show what I'm using and what's been predictable for me. All right, with that, till next time.